Tonight, we pull back the curtain on a world that surrounds us constantly, yet remains largely unseen. The world of freight and logistics. Every time you flip a light switch, open a refrigerator, or pick up a product from a shelf, you are touching the end result of an invisible symphony. Millions of packages, pallets, and containers moving across this nation in a dance as old as commerce itself, yet as modern as tomorrow's technology. From the rumble of 18 wheels on midnight highways to the quiet hum of warehouse conveyor belts at dawn, from the careful choreography of dispatch centers to the patient scales of weigh stations, this is the story of how America moves. If you enjoy these journeys down the American highways, feel free to like and subscribe or share your thoughts in the comments below. It helps others find their way here too, one curious soul at a time. But for now, settle in. Pour yourself a cup of coffee like the drivers do in truck stops across the country. And let's begin our journey into the heart of freight and logistics. Before the 20th century arrived with its promise of mechanized speed, most freight in America traveled by rail or horse-drawn wagon. Picture the country then, a nation connected by iron rails and dusty roads, where goods moved at the pace of steam engines and the steady clip-clop of hooves. Cities grew around railroad terminals. Warehouses sprouted beside switching yards. The entire geography of commerce was written in steel tracks that crisscrossed the continent. But in 1897, something shifted. A man named Alexander Winton, who ran the Winton Motor Carriage Company, faced a problem that would change everything. He needed to move his automobiles from his factory to customers, and the journey was damaging the vehicles. So he did something ingenious. He converted one of his cars into a tractor and attached a small trailer behind it. The first tractor-trailer combination was born not from grand industrial vision, but from a simple need to solve a problem. For years, trucks remained curiosities, expensive toys appreciated more for their novelty than their utility. In 1910, there were perhaps 10,000 trucks on American roads. These early machines rolled on solid rubber tires that transmitted every bump and rut directly to the cargo. Their maximum speed rarely exceeded 15 miles per hour. Range was measured in dozens of miles, not hundreds. And the roads themselves, mostly earth and gravel, turned to impassable mud with every rain. Then came the Great War. World War I taught the American military what trucks could do. Suddenly, thousands of motorized vehicles were deployed, replacing cavalry and demonstrating that cargo could move quickly, flexibly, over terrain where rails could never reach. Soldiers returned home having driven trucks through French countryside, and they brought that knowledge back to civilian life. The 1920s saw the pieces fall into place. Pneumatic tires replaced solid rubber, transforming the ride and allowing trucks to travel at highway speeds. The fifth-wheel coupling system emerged, making it possible to connect and disconnect trailers in minutes rather than hours. Electric lights allowed night driving. Power steering and power brakes arrived. Diesel engines, 25 to 40% more efficient than gasoline, began replacing their thirstier cousins, and the roads themselves began to change. In 1916, the federal government enacted a national road building program. By 1914, there had been fewer than 15,000 miles of paved roads in the entire country. Over the next decade, $75 million poured into new construction and improvements. America was paving its future, mile by mile. By 1933, all states had enacted some form of truck weight regulation. Maine set its limit at 18,000 pounds. Massachusetts allowed 28,000. The patchwork of rules meant that a truck legal in one state became illegal the moment it crossed a border, but it was a start. The nation was beginning to understand that these rumbling machines needed structure, oversight, coordination. The Motor Carrier Act of 1935 brought federal regulation to interstate trucking. The Interstate Commerce Commission, which had been created decades earlier to regulate railroads, now extended its reach to trucks. Routes were assigned. Rates were set. Certificates of authority determined who could haul what, where. For the next 45 years, trucking would operate under this framework, a carefully controlled system that limited competition but ensured stability. Then, in 1956, came the interstate highway system. Imagine the country as it was before those ribbons of concrete unfurled across the landscape. A truck traveling from New York to Los Angeles might take weeks, navigating through the heart of every town, stopping at every red light, crawling through traffic on two-lane roads that wound through mountains and across prairies. The interstates changed everything. Suddenly, the nation was connected by highways designed specifically for high-speed, long-distance travel. Bypasses skirted cities. Grade separations eliminated intersections. Rest areas and truck stops sprouted at regular intervals. The modern trucking industry was born on these roads, and in 1980, the Motor Carrier Act deregulated the industry. Overnight, the carefully controlled system dissolved. New carriers could enter the market. Rates became negotiable. Competition intensified. Some companies failed. Others thrived. The industry transformed from a utility operating like a railroad to a dynamic, market-driven force. Today, over 70% of all freight in America moves by truck. The industry that began with one man's ingenuity has become the circulatory system of the national economy. Along every major highway in America, if you drive long enough, you will see them. Green signs announcing their presence miles in advance. Exit ramps leading to broad parking areas filled with massive scales and small buildings. Way stations. To the casual driver, they are curiosities, places where the big rigs peel off while cars sail past. But to understand freight, you must understand these checkpoints, these places where tons become numbers and regulations meet reality. Way stations exist for three fundamental reasons. First, to protect the roads themselves. A fully loaded truck can weigh 80,000 pounds, 40 tons of rolling mass pressing down through 18 wheels onto pavement designed to last decades. Exceed that weight, and the damage multiplies exponentially. Engineers have calculated that a single overweight truck can cause as much road damage as thousands of cars. Every state, every county, every municipality budgets millions for road maintenance. Way stations are the first line of defense, ensuring that trucks stay within the limits that keep our highways from crumbling. Second, way stations collect data and verify compliance with a web of regulations. Hours of service rules limit how long drivers can be behind the wheel. Equipment safety standards dictate everything from brake systems to tire tread depth. Proper documentation must accompany every load. Way stations are checkpoints where these requirements are enforced, where the reality of the road meets the letter of the law. Third, and historically first, way stations were created to collect taxes. Before the International Fuel Tax Agreement created an integrated system, many states calculated road use taxes based on cargo weight. Heavy trucks caused more wear on roads, so they paid more. Though tax collection has largely moved to other systems, this legacy remains in the DNA of way stations. The stations themselves are marvels of engineering, though you would never know it from the outside. Some use traditional platform scales, where a truck must come to a complete stop on a weighbridge while load cells beneath measure the force pressing down. These cells are sensitive enough to detect weight imbalances between axles, critical information for safety. The weight of each axle is measured, recorded, compared against limits. Too much weight on any single axle can damage the road and compromise the truck's handling. Newer stations employ weigh-in-motion technology, embedded sensors in the roadway that can measure a truck's weight while it rolls past at highway speed. Imagine the precision required. A truck traveling at 60 miles per hour, covering 88 feet every second, its weight distributed across multiple axles, each wheel bouncing slightly with road imperfections. Yet the sensors can capture it all, translate those fleeting pressures into accurate measurements, and make a determination in seconds. Green light means continue. Red light means pull over for closer inspection. The maximum legal weight in the United States is 80,000 pounds for a standard 5-axle combination. But this is just the beginning of a complex calculation. Weight must be distributed properly. The distance between axles matters. Bridge formulas take into account how weight is spread. A truck with closely spaced axles puts more concentrated pressure on infrastructure than one with the same weight spread across a longer wheelbase. Regulations reflect these physics, creating a three-dimensional puzzle that drivers and dispatchers must solve with every load. Portable weigh stations add another layer. States can set up temporary scales at any location, often on roads where trucks might otherwise avoid fixed stations. During harvest season, when agricultural products flood rural highways, portable scales appear at intersections and rest areas, ensuring that even remote routes stay within safe limits. For truck drivers, weigh stations are a fact of life as constant as fuel stops and rest breaks. Most commercial vehicles over 10,000 pounds must stop at every open station they encounter. Failure to do so can result in heavy fines, points against a driver's commercial license, or even criminal charges in some states. Law enforcement often stations officers just past weigh station exits, specifically to catch trucks that try to bypass the scales. But technology has created alternatives. Programs like Pre-Pass and DriveWise allow trucks with good safety records to bypass many weigh stations automatically. Transponders in the cab communicate with station systems. If the truck is within weight limits and the company has a clean inspection record, a green light appears on a roadside reader, and the driver can continue without stopping. This saves time for compliant operators and allows inspection resources to focus on higher-risk vehicles. Inside the scale houses, DOT inspectors have the authority to conduct 6 levels of inspection, each progressively more detailed. Level 1 is comprehensive, a bumper-to-bumper examination that can take an hour or more. Inspectors check brake adjustments, tire conditions, coupling devices, cargo securement, lighting systems, and dozens of other components. They review logbooks, looking for hours of service violations. They verify that the driver holds a valid commercial license. They may even conduct alcohol or drug tests if they have reason for suspicion. Level 6, at the other extreme, is a simple visual check from a distance, confirming that nothing obviously dangerous is visible. Most inspections fall somewhere in between, targeting specific concerns based on the type of cargo, the company's safety record, or the truck's apparent condition. When a truck fails inspection, the consequences can be immediate and severe. Out-of-service orders can ground a vehicle on the spot, requiring repairs before it can move another foot. Drivers in violation of hours of service rules may be forced to rest before continuing. Serious safety defects can result in hefty fines and black marks on a company's safety record that affect insurance rates and future business opportunities. Yet for all their seeming strictness, weigh stations serve a vital purpose. They keep our highways safe. They level the playing field between companies that cut corners and those that invest in proper maintenance. They protect bridges and roads from damage that would cost taxpayers billions to repair. In the quiet mathematics of weight and force, in the patient verification of documents and inspection of components, weigh stations are the guardians of the infrastructure we often take for granted. Before a truck can roll, before weight can be measured, before dispatchers can assign loads, there is packaging. The quiet science of taking products and preparing them for a journey that might span thousands of miles, through temperature extremes, vibrations, impacts, and the careful chaos of loading docks and warehouse floors. At the heart of modern freight sits a deceptively simple invention: the pallet. 48 inches long, 40 inches wide, these platforms of wood or plastic have standardized the movement of goods across the world. The standard pallet, often called a GMA pallet, after the Grocery Manufacturers Association, is so ubiquitous that entire supply chains are designed around its dimensions. Warehouse aisles, truck trailers, shipping containers, even the spacing of shelving systems all accommodate these measurements. A pallet is more than a platform. It is a unit of organization in a world that moves millions of items daily. Picture a warehouse receiving dock at dawn. Trucks arrive, their trailers packed with pallets stacked 2 or 3 high. Forklifts maneuver through the space with practiced precision, lifting pallets that might weigh a ton or more with casual efficiency. Each pallet represents hours of careful loading at the origin, dozens or hundreds of individual boxes organized into a stable, transportable unit. The wood itself tells a story. Most pallets are made from oak or yellow pine, hardwoods chosen for their strength and availability. They are built to support thousands of pounds, to survive being lifted, stacked, dragged across concrete floors, and dropped from heights that would shatter other materials. A pallet's dynamic load capacity, the weight it can carry while being lifted and moved, can exceed 5,000 pounds for plastic models and 2,500 pounds for wooden ones. But pallets require cargo that can survive the journey. This is where the art of packaging begins. Boxes must be filled completely to prevent crushing. Empty space invites collapse when pallets stack above. Heavier items go on the bottom, lighter on top. The principle is ancient, as old as building itself, but critical. A pallet loaded incorrectly becomes unstable, shifts in transit, tips, and collapses. Stacking patterns matter. Column stacking, where boxes align vertically, provides maximum compression strength, but can be unstable without proper securing. Interlocking patterns, where boxes in each layer overlap like bricks in a wall, sacrifice some vertical strength for lateral stability. The choice depends on the cargo, the journey length, and how many other pallets might stack above. Between layers, slip sheets of cardboard distribute weight and prevent shifting. Edge protectors, L-shaped pieces of reinforced cardboard, wrap around corners and provide bracing against the strapping that will hold everything together. These small details, invisible to anyone who does not work in logistics, make the difference between cargo that arrives intact and cargo that becomes a claim. Stretch wrap, that ubiquitous plastic film, binds the load. Workers circle the pallet dozens of times, wrapping from bottom to top, creating a cocoon that holds boxes together and shields them from dust and moisture. Proper wrapping requires achieving minimum containment force, enough pressure to prevent shifting without crushing the cargo. Too loose and the load slides apart. Too tight and boxes deform, products inside suffer damage. For heavier items or those prone to shifting, steel or plastic strapping adds another layer of security. Bands wrap around the entire pallet, top to bottom, cinched tight with tools that can generate thousands of pounds of tension. These bands must avoid the pallet's entry notches, the spaces where forklift tines slide in. Block the notches, and the pallet becomes impossible to lift. Some cargo demands special treatment. Bagged products, bulk materials that shift and compress, require wooden trays top and bottom, cushioning with corrugated boards, and careful attention to how bags interlock. Drums and barrels, prone to rolling, need bracing, blocks of wood wedged between them to prevent movement. Fragile items might ride in corrugated pallet boxes, essentially large cardboard containers that provide walls and a roof, or in custom wooden crates built to exact specifications. Temperature-sensitive products introduce another complexity. Refrigerated and frozen goods must maintain their cold chain from origin to destination. This requires specialized trailers with their own refrigeration units, separate fuel tanks to power cooling systems, and careful monitoring. A single breakdown can spoil thousands of dollars of product in hours. Labeling ties it all together. Every pallet, every box carries information. Barcodes that scanners read in milliseconds, tracking movements through the supply chain. Human-readable text describing contents, destination, special handling instructions. Symbols indicating fragile cargo which end points up, whether the load can be stacked. These labels are the language of logistics, allowing thousands of people who will never speak to each other to coordinate the movement of goods with precision. The science extends to understanding how freight travels. Trucks vibrate. The constant bouncing and jostling of wheels on pavement transmits through the trailer, into pallets, into products. Packaging must absorb this energy or risk damage. Turns create lateral forces, pushing loads sideways. Braking creates forward forces. Every acceleration, every curve, every bump tests the integrity of how cargo is packed and secured. Even the trailer itself is part of the system. A standard 53-foot dry van can hold 26 to 30 pallets in a single layer, more if stacking allows. But proper loading balances weight, prevents shifting, and ensures that the truck remains stable and controllable. Too much weight forward and the trailer becomes difficult to steer. Too much weight on the rear and the drive axles lose traction. Proper loading is both art and engineering, a three-dimensional puzzle solved thousands of times daily across the country. In the middle of the night, in industrial parks on the edges of cities across America, distribution centers hum with activity. While most of the country sleeps, these vast buildings pulse with motion. Forklifts zip through aisles stacked 40 feet high. Conveyor belts carry boxes in endless streams. Workers pick orders, pack shipments, and stage pallets for morning deliveries. These are the nodes in the network, the places where the national supply chain sorts itself, where chaos becomes order. Understanding the difference between a warehouse and a distribution center requires looking at time. Warehouses store. Goods arrive and sit, sometimes for weeks or months, waiting for demand to call them forward. Think of seasonal inventory, products manufactured year-round but sold in concentrated bursts. Decorations waiting for holidays. Summer clothing stored through winter. Agricultural products held between harvest and consumption. Warehouses provide buffer space in the supply chain, decoupling production from consumption, allowing manufacturers to run at steady rates even when demand fluctuates wildly. Distribution centers move. Inventory flowing through them is measured in days or hours, not months. Trucks arrive constantly, unloading freight that immediately gets sorted, consolidated, and reloaded onto other trucks heading to stores, customers, or other distribution points. These facilities are optimized for throughput, for the rapid transformation of arriving freight into departing shipments. A typical large distribution center serving a major retailer handles 50 to 125 stores. Imagine the scope. Thousands of products from hundreds of suppliers all converge on one location, get broken down from bulk shipments into store-specific orders, and redistribute outward. Without these facilities, every supplier would need to ship directly to every store, a multiplication of complexity that would be economically impossible. The architecture of these buildings reflects their purpose. High ceilings accommodate rack systems that stretch upward, maximizing cubic footage. Wide aisles allow forklifts and pallet jacks to maneuver. Dock doors line the perimeter, separate receiving areas for inbound freight, shipping areas for outbound. In some facilities, each store has its own dedicated door, trucks pulling in and out like clockwork. Inside, the choreography is precise. The receiving area is where inbound freight arrives. Workers unload trucks, scan barcodes, and verify contents against manifests. Some items go directly to storage, rising on forklifts to slots 40 feet above the floor. Others go to cross-docking areas, barely touching the ground before being sorted and loaded onto outbound trucks. This is the ultimate expression of distribution, products flowing through without ever really stopping. Cross-docking itself is an art. Imagine a trailer arriving with products for 20 different stores. Rather than storing everything and later picking individual orders, cross-docking breaks the load apart and immediately sorts items into 20 different outbound shipments. The product touches down once on the dock floor, gets scanned, and moves to its next destination. The efficiency is remarkable, cutting handling time from days to hours. Storage areas employ various strategies. Some use fixed locations, where each product has an assigned spot. This makes finding items straightforward but can waste space when inventory levels fluctuate. Others use dynamic locations, where products go to whatever space is available. Computer systems track everything, guiding workers to precise coordinates. Aisle 12, Bay 17, Level 4. The computer knows what is there when it arrived, when it needs to ship. Order fulfillment brings it all together. A store places an order, a computer breaks it into picking tasks, and workers move through the facility with carts or automated systems, gathering items one by one. Each pick is scanned, verifying the right product. Quantities accumulate. Eventually, everything for one order comes together at a packing station, gets wrapped and labeled, and moves to the shipping dock. Modern facilities increasingly employ automation. Conveyor systems snake through buildings, carrying boxes on precisely timed journeys. Automated storage and retrieval systems use computer-controlled cranes to fetch pallets from towering racks, no human required. Robotic picking systems use vision and artificial intelligence to identify and grasp items, placing them in bins or onto conveyors. But for all the technology, humans remain essential. Warehouse work is physical, demanding. Workers walk miles daily. They lift, carry, bend, and reach thousands of times per shift. Safety is paramount. Forklifts and people share space, a combination that requires constant attention. Proper training, clear rules, and respect for procedures prevent accidents that could be devastating. The facilities themselves require massive infrastructure. Climate control for temperature-sensitive products. Fire suppression systems capable of protecting hundreds of millions of dollars of inventory. Security systems monitoring every entry, every movement. Backup power to keep refrigeration running if the grid fails. These are not simple buildings. They are complex machines for managing flow. And flow is what matters. Metrics measure everything. Turns, the number of times inventory cycles through, indicate efficiency. Dwell time, how long freight sits before moving, highlights bottlenecks. Accuracy rates, the percentage of orders picked correctly, affect customer satisfaction. Throughput, the volume moving per hour, determines capacity. Every aspect of operations is quantified, analyzed, and optimized. The relationship between warehouses and distribution centers reveals itself in global supply chains. A manufacturer in Asia ships containers to a port. From the port, freight moves to a warehouse where it waits, stored in bulk. When orders come in, shipments move from the warehouse to regional distribution centers, which break them down further and send them to local stores or customers. Each step adds value, transforming large, economical shipments into precisely sized deliveries that meet specific needs. In office buildings and remote work setups across America, freight dispatchers sit at computers surrounded by multiple screens. One shows a map dotted with icons representing trucks. Another displays a load board, a digital marketplace where shippers post available freight and carriers search for loads. A third tracks driver hours, watching the countdown of time remaining before rest breaks become mandatory. Dispatchers are the conductors of the freight symphony, coordinating movement that most people never see. Dispatching begins with finding freight. Load boards like DAT and Truckstop function as giant matching services. Shippers post details about cargo that needs moving. Origin, destination, weight, dimensions, special requirements, rate offered. Carriers search for loads that fit their equipment, their drivers' locations, and their preferred lanes. A driver finishing a delivery in Atlanta might be matched with a load heading to Chicago, then another from Chicago to Houston, then Houston back to Atlanta. The goal is to minimize empty miles. The deadhead runs where trucks travel without cargo, burning fuel and earning nothing. But dispatchers do more than find loads. They are problem solvers, communicators, and strategists. When a driver calls reporting a breakdown, the dispatcher coordinates repairs, reroutes the load if necessary, and manages communication with the shipper. When weather closes highways, dispatchers reroute trucks, adjust schedules, and notify customers of delays. When delivery appointments change, dispatchers juggle arrival times and coordinate with other loads. Route planning is both art and science. Software calculates optimal paths, considering distance, fuel costs, tolls, and time. But dispatchers overlay their knowledge, avoiding routes with low bridges that tall loads cannot clear, steering wide loads away from narrow city streets, planning fuel stops at locations with the best prices. Experience matters. A dispatcher who has been doing this for years knows which truck stops have good food, where construction projects are creating delays, and which shippers are consistently early or late. Hours of service regulations add complexity. Federal law limits truck drivers to 11 hours of driving within a 14-hour window, followed by a mandatory 10-hour rest period. After 70 hours in 8 days or 60 hours in 7 days, an extended rest is required. Dispatchers must track these limits constantly, planning routes that get loads delivered without pushing drivers past legal limits. Violate these rules and the consequences are severe: fines, out-of-service orders, and black marks on safety records. Communication is constant. Drivers call in from the road, reporting progress, asking questions, requesting routing changes. Shippers contact dispatchers about pickup times, special instructions, changes to orders. Customers inquire about delivery estimates, tracking numbers, proof of delivery. A dispatcher might field dozens of calls in an hour, each requiring immediate decision-making. Technology has transformed the role. Electronic logging devices automatically track driver hours, eliminating the paper logbooks that could be manipulated. GPS tracking shows truck locations in real time, removing the mystery of where a load is at any moment. Mobile apps allow drivers and dispatchers to communicate instantly, sharing photos of freight damage, digital signatures for deliveries, and updates that used to require phone calls. Transportation management systems coordinate it all. These software platforms integrate load boards, route planning, driver tracking, customer communication, and back-office functions like billing and compliance. A dispatcher can see the entire operation on one screen, making decisions based on complete information rather than fragmented data. The relationship between dispatchers and drivers is crucial. Good dispatchers understand that drivers are not just resources to be directed, but professionals with knowledge, needs, and preferences. Some drivers prefer long hauls, days on the road earning maximum miles. Others want regional routes that get them home regularly. Some excel at flatbed work, securing oddly shaped loads. Others specialize in refrigerated freight or hazmat materials. Effective dispatchers match loads to drivers' strengths and preferences, creating satisfaction and retention. Negotiation is part of the job. The rate shown on a load board is not always final. Dispatchers negotiate with brokers, arguing for higher pay based on fuel costs, special requirements, or tight schedules. A skilled dispatcher might secure an extra $100 per load, money that flows directly to the driver and the company. Over hundreds of loads annually, these negotiations add up to significant income. Dispatchers also handle administrative work. Bills of lading, the legal documents that accompany freight, must be accurate. Proof of delivery must be collected and filed. Invoices must be sent and payments tracked. Compliance paperwork ensures that weight limits, hazmat regulations, and other requirements are met. This behind-the-scenes work is unglamorous but essential. For owner-operators, independent drivers who own their trucks, dispatching services can be the difference between success and failure. Many small operators lack the time or expertise to find good loads, negotiate rates, and handle paperwork while also driving. They hire dispatching companies or independent dispatchers, paying a percentage of each load in exchange for consistent freight and administrative support. The dispatcher becomes their business partner, managing everything except the actual driving. The industry has its own rhythm. Freight volumes fluctuate with seasons, weeks, even days. Retail supply chains surge before holidays. Agricultural products flood the market after harvests. January and February can be slow as post-holiday demand drops. Dispatchers manage through these cycles, finding loads when they are scarce, saying no to unprofitable runs when freight is abundant. And always the unexpected. Accidents close highways. Winter storms shut down entire regions. Port strikes create backups. Fires at warehouses disrupt supply chains. Dispatchers respond, rerouting, delaying, finding alternatives. The freight must move, and moving it is their responsibility. Stand at a truck stop, and you will see the variety. Massive 18-wheelers pulling 53-foot trailers. Smaller straight trucks with their cargo boxes permanently attached to the cab. Pickup trucks towing heavy trailers in the world of hotshot trucking. Each vehicle represents a different approach to moving freight, a solution to a particular problem in the vast equation of logistics. Full truckload, FTL, is perhaps the easiest to understand. One shipper's freight fills one truck. The truck travels directly from origin to destination, and the cargo arrives intact and relatively undisturbed. Picture a manufacturer shipping 1,000 boxes of a single product from a factory to a distribution center. The entire trailer is theirs, sealed at origin and not opened until arrival. Transit times are predictable. Handling is minimal. For large shipments, time-sensitive deliveries, or fragile products, FTL makes sense. But what if you have only 6 pallets? Paying for an entire truck when you need a fraction of its capacity is inefficient. This is where less than truckload, LTL, becomes valuable. LTL carriers consolidate freight from multiple shippers into single trailers. Your 6 pallets join shipments from other companies, filling the truck and sharing costs. You pay only for the space you use. The trade-off is complexity. LTL freight follows a hub-and-spoke model. Your shipment is picked up and taken to a local terminal, where it is sorted and consolidated with other freight heading in the same general direction. From there, it travels to a regional hub, possibly another consolidation, and eventually to a terminal near the destination before final delivery. Along the way, your pallets are loaded and unloaded multiple times, transferred between trailers, and handled by numerous people. This process takes longer than direct FTL shipping. Where an FTL load might take 2 days to cross the country, the same freight moving LTL could take 5 or 6. But for shipments between 1 and 10 pallets, the cost savings often outweigh the time penalty. A business that regularly ships small quantities can operate efficiently with LTL, avoiding the expense of dedicated trucks. The industry has developed nuanced categories. Volume LTL targets shipments of 6 to 10 pallets, larger than standard LTL but smaller than FTL. Partial truckload covers 8 to 18 pallets, freight that could fill a truck partway but not completely. These middle ground options balance cost and service, providing alternatives when neither pure LTL nor full truckload is ideal. Freight classification adds another layer of complexity to LTL. The National Motor Freight Traffic Association maintains a classification system that assigns every type of product a freight class ranging from 50 to 500. The classification considers density, handling difficulty, liability, and stowability. Dense, easy-to-handle products like bricks earn low class numbers and cheaper rates. Light, bulky items like pillows or delicate, high-value goods like electronics earn higher class numbers and cost more to ship. This system ensures that rates reflect the true cost of moving freight. A truckload of feather pillows takes up as much space as a load of bricks, but weighs far less, meaning the carrier earns fewer pounds of revenue per cubic foot. Fragile items require extra care, increasing the risk of damage and claims. High-value goods need more insurance. The freight classification system captures these factors in a single number that determines pricing. Understanding the economics reveals why these distinctions matter. An FTL carrier's costs are relatively straightforward: fuel, driver wages, truck maintenance, insurance, and overhead. Divide the total by miles driven and you get a cost per mile. Price loads above this and the company profits. Simple in theory, though competition and market forces create constant pressure. LTL carriers face different economics. They must maintain terminal networks, invest in material handling equipment, and employ armies of dock workers. Each shipment gets handled multiple times, each touch adding cost. But when operated efficiently, LTL networks achieve amazing economies of scale. A single truck might carry freight for 50 different customers, each paying their share. The margins per pound are smaller, but the volume compensates. The industry also operates on accessorial charges, fees for services beyond basic pickup and delivery. Liftgate service for locations without loading docks. Inside delivery beyond the first threshold. Residential delivery to homes rather than businesses. Notifications before delivery. Each service adds cost, and carriers charge accordingly. Shippers who understand these fees can plan to avoid them, using commercial addresses with docks instead of residential locations, arranging to have staff available for unloading without assistance. Fuel surcharges fluctuate with diesel prices, protecting carriers from volatile fuel markets. When fuel costs rise, so do surcharges, passing the expense to shippers. When prices fall, surcharges decrease. This mechanism stabilizes carrier finances, preventing fuel price swings from destroying profitability. Weight and dimensions affect pricing in intricate ways. Freight is charged either by actual weight or dimensional weight, whichever is greater. Dimensional weight is calculated by multiplying length, width, and height, then dividing by a factor. This prevents shippers from filling trucks with lightweight, bulky items that take up space without generating revenue. A trailer full of foam packing peanuts might weigh 2,000 pounds but fill the entire 53 feet. Dimensional weight pricing ensures the carrier earns fair compensation. Stackability matters too. Freight that can be stacked allows carriers to maximize trailer capacity. Non-stackable shipments waste vertical space, reducing efficiency. Many carriers impose surcharges for non-stackable freight, incentivizing shippers to package goods in ways that allow stacking. All of these factors create a complex pricing landscape. Two shipments of identical weight going the same distance might cost vastly different amounts due to class, stackability, accessorials, and timing. Understanding the system allows sophisticated shippers to reduce costs dramatically, while those ignorant of the details pay premiums. Between the companies that produce goods and the carriers that move them lies a vast industry of intermediaries. Freight brokers, third-party logistics providers dispatching services. These middlemen do not own trucks. They do not manufacture products. Instead, they connect, coordinate, and optimize. Understanding their role reveals how modern supply chains function. A freight broker acts as a matchmaker. Shippers need to move freight. Carriers need loads. Brokers bring them together, earning a margin on the transaction. The shipper posts a load, the broker searches their network of carriers, and a match is made. The broker handles paperwork, coordinates pickup and delivery, and manages communication. For shippers, especially smaller businesses, brokers provide access to capacity they could never contract directly. Maintaining relationships with hundreds of carriers, negotiating rates, vetting safety records, managing multiple shipments simultaneously requires expertise and resources. Brokers offer this as a service, allowing businesses to focus on their core operations rather than logistics. For carriers, particularly owner-operators and small fleets. Brokers provide consistent freight without the need for sales teams or direct customer relationships. A truck finishes a delivery, the driver calls a broker, and the broker finds another load. The margin the broker takes is the price of this convenience. Third-party logistics providers, 3PLs, go further. They manage entire supply chains on behalf of their clients. Warehousing, transportation, order fulfillment, inventory management, even customer service. Large 3PLs operate distribution centers, own or contract trucks, and integrate all these services into seamless operations. Consider a company that manufactures products in Asia and sells them in America. A 3PL can handle the entire journey: ocean shipping from the factory to a port, customs clearance and documentation, transportation to a warehouse, storage and inventory management, order processing and fulfillment, final delivery to customers. The manufacturer focuses on making products while the 3PL handles everything else. This model has enabled the explosion of e-commerce. Small businesses that could never afford their own warehouses, truck fleets, and logistics departments can compete nationally by partnering with 3PLs. They send products to the 3PL's warehouse, orders flow in from their website, and the 3PL picks, packs, and ships. To the customer, the experience is seamless, but behind it lies a complex infrastructure managed by specialists. Fourth-party logistics, 4PL, takes this even further. A 4PL manages other 3PLs, coordinating multiple providers into a single cohesive supply chain. They do not operate warehouses or trucks, but instead orchestrate the entire network, optimizing across providers to achieve the best outcomes. Technology platforms have disrupted traditional brokerage. Digital freight brokers use software to automate matching, pricing, and coordination. Shippers post loads online, algorithms find suitable carriers, and transactions happen with minimal human involvement. These platforms promise greater efficiency, lower costs, and faster service. Traditional brokers argue that experience and relationships still matter, that complex shipments require human judgment. The tension between automation and human expertise plays out daily. Software can optimize routes and match loads to carriers with impressive speed. But when a truck breaks down 2 states away, when weather forces rerouting, or when a customer needs to change a delivery appointment at the last minute, human problem-solving becomes valuable. Freight forwarders, particularly in international shipping, specialize in navigating the complexity of cross-border logistics. Customs regulations, documentation requirements, duties and tariffs, and compliance with both exporting and importing countries create challenges that require deep expertise. Forwarders manage these details, ensuring that products clear customs smoothly and reach their destinations without costly delays. The margin structure of these intermediaries has generated controversy. Brokers might quote a shipper one price and pay a carrier less, keeping the difference. In competitive markets, this margin can be slim, 3 to 10%. In tight capacity situations, margins can explode to 20 or 30% as brokers hold pricing power. Some argue this is fair compensation for the service provided. Others view it as parasitic, extracting value without creating it. Regulations require freight brokers to register with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, post bonds, and maintain certain standards. This provides some protection for shippers and carriers, ensuring that brokers who fail to pay or honor agreements face consequences. But enforcement challenges remain, and disputes over payments or service are common. The emergence of load boards democratized freight matching. Before digital platforms, finding loads required phone calls, faxes, and personal networks. Now, a driver anywhere in the country can see thousands of available loads in seconds, compare rates, and book directly. This transparency has shifted power, giving carriers more options and forcing brokers to compete on service rather than just access to information. Yet even with all this technology, relationships persist. Carriers develop preferred broker lists, working repeatedly with brokers who pay promptly, communicate clearly, and provide good loads. Brokers cultivate networks of reliable carriers, knowing which companies deliver on time and handle freight carefully. In an industry where trust matters, these relationships create value that no algorithm can fully replace. Every truck on American highways operates under a complex web of regulations designed to ensure safety. At the heart of these rules are hours of service requirements, federal mandates that limit how long drivers can work and when they must rest. Understanding these regulations reveals the human reality behind freight movement, the drivers whose bodies and attention sustain the supply chain. The current rules, established by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, allow a driver to work 14 hours from the moment their day begins. Within those 14 hours, they can drive for a maximum of 11 hours. After 14 hours, whether they have driven 11 hours or not, they must take a 10-hour break. Then the cycle can restart. But it is more nuanced. A driver must take a 30-minute break after 8 hours of driving. This can be a meal stop, a rest break, or simply time spent not driving. The rule recognizes that sustained driving creates fatigue, and brief breaks improve alertness. Beyond the daily limits, weekly limits apply. A driver can work 70 hours in 8 consecutive days, or 60 hours in 7 consecutive days. After reaching this limit, they must take a 34-hour restart period before beginning another cycle. This prevents the accumulation of fatigue over time, ensuring that drivers get substantial rest regularly. These rules complicate dispatching and scheduling. A load that requires 15 hours of driving cannot be completed in a single shift. The driver will need to stop for the 10-hour break, extending the delivery time. Dispatchers must plan around these limits, calculating not just distance but available hours, building in buffer time for unexpected delays that might consume driving hours. Electronic logging devices, ELDs, enforce these rules automatically. Connected to the truck's engine, the ELD records precisely when the vehicle moves, when it stops, and for how long. This data is categorized. Driving time, on duty not driving time when the driver is working but not behind the wheel, and off-duty time when they are resting. The ELD tracks it all, providing an indisputable record. Before ELDs became mandatory in December 2017, drivers kept paper logbooks. These could be manipulated, hours adjusted to extend driving time illegally. The industry debate was fierce. Some argued that paper logs allowed flexibility for the unpredictability of the job. Others pointed to safety data showing that fatigued driving contributed to thousands of accidents annually. The mandate passed, and now virtually every commercial truck operates with an ELD. The impact has been significant. Drivers can no longer exceed limits, even by minutes. Productivity decreased for some operations as the grace period paper logs allowed disappeared. But accident rates have shown modest improvements, particularly in crashes attributed to fatigue. The trade-off between productivity and safety continues to generate discussion. Driver retention and recruitment have become critical industry challenges. The work is demanding, long hours away from home, physical stress from sitting for extended periods, irregular schedules. The lifestyle does not suit everyone, and the average age of truck drivers has been creeping upward for decades. Younger workers often seek careers that offer more regular hours, home time, and less physical strain. Pay structures vary. Company drivers typically earn a per-mile rate, creating an incentive to maximize miles driven. Owner-operators who own their trucks bear all expenses, fuel, maintenance, insurance, and earn either per mile or a percentage of the load revenue. In both cases, downtime waiting at shipping docks, sitting in traffic, or resting during mandatory breaks generates no income. Detention time charges attempt to address this. If a driver waits more than 2 hours for loading or unloading, the carrier can charge detention fees, compensating for lost productivity. But these fees are often difficult to collect, creating friction between carriers and shippers. Safety regulations extend beyond hours of service. Commercial drivers' licenses require testing and background checks. Medical certifications ensure drivers meet health standards. Drug and alcohol testing is random and mandatory after accidents. Vehicles must pass annual inspections. Brake systems, lights, tires, and dozens of other components are checked and certified. When violations occur, the consequences build. The Compliance, Safety, Accountability Program tracks carriers and drivers, assigning scores based on inspections, accidents, and violations. High scores can lead to increased inspections, insurance premium increases, and customers refusing to do business. For owner-operators, a bad CSA score can be financially devastating. Yet despite all the rules, driving remains dangerous. Large trucks are involved in thousands of fatal crashes annually. Many are caused by errors from passenger vehicle drivers who do not understand truck blind spots, stopping distances, or turning radius. But driver fatigue, distraction, and speeding also contribute. The regulations attempt to minimize these factors, but they cannot eliminate risk entirely. The future may bring autonomous trucks, vehicles that drive themselves, eliminating hours of service limits entirely. But that future remains distant, with technical, legal, and social challenges yet to be resolved. For now, human drivers remain the backbone of freight movement, and the regulations that govern their hours reflect society's attempt to balance economic efficiency with human welfare. After hundreds or thousands of miles, through weigh stations and dispatch coordination, past warehouses and distribution centers, freight arrives at its final destination. But the journey is not complete until the cargo changes hands, documentation is signed, and the load is confirmed intact. This final mile, the last leg of the supply chain, is where everything comes together or falls apart. Delivery appointments create structure. A truck arrives at a distribution center at a scheduled time, pulls to an assigned dock, and begins unloading. Timing matters. Arrive too early and the dock may not be ready, forcing the driver to wait. Arrive too late and the appointment is missed, potentially requiring rescheduling. Detention time becomes a concern as hours tick by. The unloading process varies by type of freight and facility. For palletized loads, the receiver provides a forklift and operator who enter the trailer and remove pallets one by one. The driver typically stays in the cab, though occasionally they assist with guidance or minor tasks. For floor-loaded freight, boxes stacked directly in the trailer without pallets. Unloading is labor-intensive, workers forming lines to hand boxes down to waiting carts or conveyors. Live unload, where the driver waits while freight is removed, contrasts with drop and hook, where the driver unhitches the trailer and leaves it to be unloaded later. Drop and hook is faster for the driver, minimizing detention and allowing them to pick up an already loaded trailer and continue. But it requires the receiver to have space and equipment to handle trailers independently. The bill of lading, the legal document describing the shipment, is critical. It lists contents, weights, origin, destination, and special instructions. Both shipper and carrier sign it at pickup, acknowledging the freight's condition. At delivery, the receiver signs it again, confirming receipt. This signed document is proof of delivery, essential for billing and resolving disputes. Inspection at delivery can reveal damage. If boxes are crushed, pallets broken, or products missing, the receiver notes this on the bill of lading. These notations protect them from claims that damage occurred after delivery while alerting the carrier and shipper to a problem. Freight claims, disputes over damaged or missing goods, can take months to resolve, with carriers, shippers, and insurers all arguing over liability. Photography has become common. Drivers and receivers photograph freight before and after unloading, documenting condition. These images serve as evidence if disputes arise. Some carriers require drivers to photograph every load, while others do so only when damage is suspected. For residential deliveries, the process is more variable. Home delivery might involve carrying items inside, unpacking, and even assembling furniture. White glove service takes this further, with specialized teams handling delicate or valuable items with extreme care. These services command premium prices but serve markets like high-end furniture or appliance delivery, where customers expect more than basic drop-off. Liftgate service addresses locations without loading docks. Many businesses and most homes lack the elevated platforms that allow easy transfer between truck and ground. A liftgate, a hydraulic platform attached to the rear of the trailer, raises and lowers freight, bridging this gap. But liftgates add weight, reduce cargo capacity, and require operation time, all of which increase costs. Inside delivery, carrying freight beyond the threshold is another common accessorial. The driver brings items into a building rather than simply dropping them at the door. This service is essential for some customers, impractical for others. Clear communication prevents misunderstandings and ensures that expectations align with contracted services. Proof of delivery takes many forms. A signature on the bill of lading is standard. Some systems use electronic signature capture on tablets or phones, instantly transmitting confirmation. GPS timestamps provide additional verification, confirming the truck's location at delivery time. For high-value shipments, more elaborate protocols might apply, including identification checks and secure handoff procedures. Returns and reverse logistics introduce complexity. Products that do not sell, are damaged, or are returned by customers must flow backward through the supply chain. Trucks that delivered to stores collect returns on the same trip, backhaul loads that improve efficiency. Entire reverse logistics networks handle product returns, refurbishment, and disposal, operating parallel to forward distribution. The last mile has become a focus of innovation, particularly in e-commerce. Delivering individual packages to residences is expensive, with low density and high variability. Companies experiment with lockers, centralized pickup points where customers retrieve their packages. Drones and autonomous vehicles promise future efficiency, but remain largely experimental. For now, vans and trucks driven by humans navigate neighborhoods, dropping packages on porches across the country. Between origins and destinations, along the ribbons of highway that stitch the country together, lies an infrastructure built specifically for trucks and the people who drive them. Rest areas, truck stops, repair facilities, and fueling stations create a parallel world alongside the roads most travelers know. Rest areas, operated by state departments of transportation, provide free parking, restrooms, and often picnic areas. But for truck drivers, they offer something more valuable: a safe place to take legally mandated rest breaks. With hours of service regulations strictly enforced, finding legal parking when time runs out is critical. Some rest areas have dedicated truck parking, dozens of spaces separated from passenger vehicle areas. These fill quickly, especially on busy corridors and during peak travel times. Finding parking has become one of the profession's greatest challenges. As e-commerce has driven freight volumes higher, the number of trucks on the road has grown faster than parking spaces. Drivers approaching their hour limits frantically search for available spots. Some rest areas fill hours before sunset, forcing drivers to continue to the next location, burning precious driving time they might need later. Others park illegally on highway shoulders or ramps, risking tickets and endangering themselves and other motorists. Truck stops are the more elaborate commercial alternative. Chains like Pilot, Flying J, Love's, and TA operate hundreds of locations nationwide, offering fuel, showers, food, and parking. These are more than gas stations scaled up. They are communities, rest oases where drivers socialize, eat, and recharge themselves along with their vehicles. The business model is fascinating. Fuel sales often generate minimal profit. Instead, truck stops make money on everything else. Hot meals from restaurants inside, coffee and snacks, showers, which truckers rent for the price of a few dollars, getting a private stall with towels and toiletries included. Some truck stops include laundromats, gyms, and even movie theaters. Drivers who spend days away from home appreciate these amenities, small comforts that make life on the road more bearable. Loyalty programs tie it together. Fuel purchases earn points that can be redeemed for showers, food, or merchandise. Companies negotiate fuel discounts at preferred networks, saving cents per gallon that add up to thousands of dollars annually. Drivers learn which truck stops have the cleanest facilities, the best food, and the friendliest staff, building routines around favorite locations. Repair services at truck stops can be lifesavers. A breakdown on a remote highway can cost a driver days in lost income and leave cargo stranded. Truck stops with maintenance facilities can diagnose problems, order parts, and get trucks moving again, sometimes in hours rather than days. Mobile repair services also roam highways, mechanics in specially equipped trucks who come to breakdowns wherever they occur. Fueling itself is an operation. Truck fuel tanks hold hundreds of gallons, and filling them takes time. Dedicated truck fuel lanes separate commercial vehicles from passenger cars, preventing congestion. Some locations offer cardlock systems, unmanned fueling that drivers activate with a card, allowing 24-hour access without staffing. Truck-specific GPS systems guide drivers to appropriate facilities. Unlike passenger vehicle navigation, which might route a truck down residential streets or under low bridges, commercial GPS understands truck dimensions, weight limits, and restricted routes. It highlights truck stops, rest areas, and weigh stations, providing information drivers need that ordinary maps omit. Scale facilities at truck stops allow drivers to weigh their loads before heading to official weigh stations. Knowing the exact weight prevents surprises and allows adjustments if needed. Some drivers move axles, using sliding mechanisms that shift weight distribution to bring individual axles into compliance, even if the total weight is legal. The culture of truck stops is unique. CB radios, once the primary communication tool, still crackle with chatter at some locations. Drivers share road conditions, warn about speed traps, and engage in the banter that breaks the monotony of solitary hours. A language of nicknames and codes developed: Smokey for police, Bear Trap for speed traps, a parallel vocabulary spoken by those who spend their lives on pavement. Truck washes, often located at truck stops, keep vehicles clean. Beyond aesthetics, clean trucks reduce fuel consumption by lowering aerodynamic drag. They also help maintain the image of professionalism that companies value. Automated systems guide trucks through curtains of brushes and jets of water, emerging minutes later clean and gleaming. The pandemic highlighted the critical nature of this infrastructure. When restaurants closed, truck drivers lost access to meals and restrooms. Some truck stops remained open, classified as essential, but others reduced hours or services. The challenges exposed how dependent drivers are on this network and how vulnerable they become when it falters. A truck traveling from Los Angeles to New York can haul freight both directions, earning revenue on both legs. But if the return trip is empty, running deadhead, half the mileage generates no income. This is the challenge of empty miles, the efficiency problem that shapes routing decisions and market dynamics. Understanding backhaul requires recognizing that freight flows are not balanced. Consider agricultural products moving from farm regions to urban centers. The trucks that deliver produce to cities need freight for the return trip to rural areas. But rural regions produce more than they consume, creating a directional imbalance. Trucks heading to agricultural zones often go empty, repositioning for the next harvest load. Similar imbalances occur with manufacturing. Goods flow from factory regions to consumer markets. The reverse flow exists but is smaller. This creates headhaul lanes where rates are high and trucks plentiful, and backhaul lanes where rates are low and trucks scarce. Understanding these patterns allows carriers to plan routes that minimize empty miles. A classic example is the Midwest to Southeast lane. Products manufactured in states like Ohio and Illinois often ship to distribution centers in Georgia and the Carolinas. The Southeast produces agricultural and textile products, but consumes manufactured goods in large quantities. Trucks heading south carry high-value freight at good rates. The return north is more challenging, with fewer loads and lower rates. Carriers accept discounted backhaul rates to keep trucks moving rather than traveling empty. Seasonal patterns complicate this further. Produce harvests create freight surges that reverse normal flows. Suddenly, trucks flood into agricultural regions, competing for loads. Rates spike on outbound lanes from farming areas, while urban return lanes see rate drops. Carriers who understand these rhythms position themselves to capitalize, moving trucks to where demand will emerge. Load boards reveal these patterns. A truck sitting in a major city like Atlanta might see dozens of outbound loads posted. But a truck in rural Nebraska might see few options, forcing the driver to relocate to a larger market before finding profitable freight. This repositioning creates dead miles, but strategic repositioning to markets with consistent freight can pay off over multiple loads. Some companies specialize in certain lanes, developing expertise and customer relationships in specific corridors. A carrier focused on California to Texas might dominate that route, earning higher rates through reputation and reliability. They accept that the reverse direction is less profitable, balancing economics across both legs. Intermodal shipping offers one solution. Trucks move freight short distances to rail terminals, where containers transfer to trains for the long haul. Trains are far more fuel efficient than trucks for long distances, and rail can handle imbalanced flows more economically. The truck handles the first and last miles, where flexibility matters, while the train covers the middle, where efficiency dominates. Dedicated fleets, trucks assigned to specific customers, arrange backhaul through customer needs. A retailer shipping products from distribution centers to stores might arrange for returned merchandise, unsold goods, or packaging materials to flow back, creating balanced loads in both directions. These arrangements require coordination but eliminate empty miles. Freight brokers earn value by solving the empty miles problem. They aggregate shipments heading in the same direction, allowing carriers to find backhaul loads that might not be advertised publicly. A broker who knows a truck will finish a delivery in Memphis can contact the driver with a load heading to Detroit, filling what would otherwise be empty. The margin the broker earns reflects the value of this coordination. Technology platforms automate this matching. Algorithms analyze truck locations, load origins and destinations, and timing to suggest optimal combinations. A truck finishing in City A can be matched with a load from City B back to its home base. With City B only a short detour from City A, these marginal improvements in efficiency aggregate into significant savings. Drop trailer programs allow carriers to drop loaded trailers at customer locations for later pickup, then immediately hook to another trailer and continue. This eliminates waiting time at docks and enables continuous truck movement. The efficiency gains can turn marginal routes profitable. Empty miles are not always avoidable. Sometimes repositioning is necessary to reach profitable markets. Carriers balance the cost of deadhead against future earnings, making calculated decisions about when to move empty and when to wait for a load. Experience and market knowledge make the difference between profitability and loss. Industry averages show that empty miles account for roughly 20 to 30% of total truck travel. This represents billions of gallons of fuel, millions of tons of emissions, and billions of dollars in foregone revenue annually. Reducing empty miles even by a few percentage points could transform industry economics while benefiting the environment. Behind the scenes of every modern warehouse, invisible to everyone except those who work there, runs software that orchestrates the constant movement of goods. Warehouse management systems, WMS, are the brains of logistics facilities, tracking every item, directing every worker, and optimizing every process. Understanding what a WMS does requires imagining a warehouse without one. Workers receive verbal instructions or paper lists. They walk aisles searching for products, relying on memory and labels to find items. Inventory counts are periodic and manual, prone to errors. Orders are picked based on intuition and experience rather than algorithmic efficiency. It works after a fashion, but it is slow, error-prone, and limited in scale. A WMS changes this completely. When freight arrives, workers scan barcodes. The system instantly updates inventory, records the location, and checks against expected shipments. If discrepancies exist, they are flagged immediately. Items are assigned locations based on complex algorithms that consider product velocity, how often items are picked, storage requirements, and space availability. High-velocity items, products that ship frequently, are placed in easily accessible locations near packing stations. Slow-moving items go to higher shelves or more distant locations. The system balances minimizing travel time against maximizing storage density, solving a puzzle that would overwhelm human planning. When orders arrive, the WMS generates pick lists. These are not random. The system optimizes the sequence in which items are collected, minimizing the distance workers travel. Imagine a warehouse the size of several football fields. A single order might require items from 20 different locations. The pick list arranges these in a path that minimizes backtracking, sometimes reducing walking distance by miles over the course of a shift. Wave picking batches multiple orders together. Instead of picking one order at a time, workers collect items from many orders simultaneously, sorting them later. This is more efficient but requires sophisticated coordination. The WMS manages it, ensuring that items for one order do not get confused with another, and that everything arrives at packing stations in the correct sequence. Real-time inventory visibility transforms operations. Managers can see current stock levels on a dashboard, identify which products are running low, and forecast when reorders are necessary. This prevents stockouts that frustrate customers and overstocks that tie up capital in unsold inventory. Accuracy rates in WMS-managed warehouses often exceed 99%. Every scan confirms the right item, the right quantity, and the right destination. Errors are caught instantly rather than discovered later when a customer receives the wrong product. This precision builds customer satisfaction and reduces the costly process of handling returns and corrections. Integration with transportation systems allows the WMS to coordinate inbound and outbound shipments. When freight arrives, the system knows what is coming and when, allowing receiving workers to prepare. When orders are picked and packed, the system communicates with transportation management software to schedule trucks, print labels, and prepare shipping documentation. Some systems incorporate labor management, tracking worker productivity and identifying inefficiencies. These metrics can be controversial. Workers may feel pressured by productivity targets that seem unrealistic. Managers argue that data-driven optimization improves operations and creates better jobs. The balance between efficiency and humane working conditions remains an ongoing conversation. RFID, radio frequency identification, takes tracking further. Instead of scanning barcodes individually, RFID readers detect tags from a distance, allowing entire pallets or containers to be inventoried in seconds. This technology is more expensive but offers speed and accuracy that barcodes cannot match. High-value goods and large-scale operations increasingly adopt RFID. Automation integrates with WMS seamlessly. Automated storage and retrieval systems, robotic picking arms, and conveyor networks all communicate with the WMS, receiving instructions and reporting status. A human picker might retrieve one item every 30 seconds. A robot can sustain one pick every few seconds for hours without fatigue. The WMS coordinates this mixed workforce, assigning tasks to humans or machines based on complexity and availability. Predictive analytics overlay historical data to forecast future demand. By analyzing patterns, the WMS can anticipate which products will see increased orders and adjust stocking accordingly. Seasonal trends, promotional events, and market shifts all feed into algorithms that optimize inventory levels weeks in advance. Cloud-based WMS platforms allow multiple facilities to share data, creating visibility across entire networks. A company with warehouses in 5 states can see inventory in all locations from a single dashboard, enabling strategic decisions about where to stock products and how to route orders for minimum shipping cost. The transformation these systems enable is profound. What once required gut feel and experience now runs on data and algorithms. The human expertise remains critical for exceptions, problems the system cannot handle, but routine operations achieve efficiency and scale that would be impossible manually. We have journeyed through the world of freight and logistics, from the dawn of American trucking through the complex systems that move goods today. We have stood at weigh stations where tons become numbers, walked through warehouses where order emerges from chaos, and listened to dispatchers orchestrating movement across the continent. We have learned about pallets and packaging, about the economics of empty miles, and the mathematics of LTL and FTL. We have seen how regulations shape driver lives and how technology transforms what seemed immutable. But this story is not complete because freight and logistics never stop. Right now, at this very moment, trucks are rolling down highways in all 50 states. Dispatchers are matching loads to drivers. Warehouse workers are picking orders. Pallets are being wrapped, strapped, and staged for loading. The system we have explored is not history. It is the present tense, the continuous now of goods moving, needs being met, commerce flowing. Every time you purchase something online, a cascade of logistics activities begins. An order pings into a warehouse management system. A worker receives a pick list. Items journey from shelves to packing stations to loading docks. A truck departs, merges onto a highway, and joins the flow. Somewhere along that journey, it might pause at a weigh station, where sensors verify that weight is distributed properly and regulations are met. A dispatcher tracks its progress, coordinates the next load, ensures the driver has hours remaining to complete delivery. The package arrives at your door and the cycle completes, but elsewhere it has already begun again. Manufacturers are producing, suppliers are shipping raw materials, distribution centers are receiving, sorting, and redistributing. The rhythm never stops, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even on holidays when most of us rest. This system is imperfect. Trucks contribute to traffic congestion and carbon emissions. Warehouse work can be physically demanding. Hours of service regulations, while improving safety, create hardships for drivers. The drive toward efficiency can pressure workers. The complexity sometimes creates waste, empty miles that burn fuel for no productive purpose. These challenges are real, and acknowledging them is part of understanding the system honestly. But the system is also remarkable. Consider the infrastructure required. Millions of miles of highways, built and maintained at enormous expense. Thousands of weigh stations equipped with precise scales and staffed by inspectors. distribution centers covering hundreds of millions of square feet across the country, truck stops and rest areas providing services 24 hours daily, satellite navigation systems coordinating movement from space, software platforms managing complexity that would overwhelm any individual mind. Consider the people. Truck drivers who spend days away from families, maintaining alertness through long nights on lonely highways. Warehouse workers who lift, carry, and sort thousands of items per shift. Dispatchers who juggle variables and solve problems in real time. Dock workers who load and unload trucks in weather extremes. Mechanics who keep trucks running. All of them contribute to the flow, each role essential. Consider the optimization. Algorithms that route trucks efficiently. Systems that minimize empty miles. Warehouses that achieve 99% accuracy. The careful balance between cost and service, speed and care, efficiency and humanity. The freight and logistics industry is a massive optimization problem solved anew every day, billions of decisions aggregating into a functioning whole. As you go about your life, pay attention to freight. Notice the trucks on the highway, not as obstacles but as essential participants in your daily comfort. See the distribution centers at the edges of cities, their parking lots filled with trailers. Visit a loading dock and watch the choreography of forklifts and pallets. Ask a truck driver about their work and listen to the stories of the American highways. The goods that fill our lives, from food to furniture, from electronics to clothing, all traveled these invisible networks. Understanding freight and logistics is understanding the infrastructure of modern life, the systems that make abundance possible, the work that happens in the background while we sleep. If you have enjoyed this journey, consider subscribing to follow more stories from the American highways. Share your thoughts in the comments. What aspects of freight and logistics surprised you? What questions remain? The conversation continues just as the trucks roll on. For now, rest well. The highways never sleep, and tomorrow the freight will move again. Somewhere, a dispatcher is planning tomorrow's loads. Somewhere, a driver is calculating hours and miles. Somewhere, a warehouse is preparing for the next shipment. The work continues, the system flows, and America moves. Thank you for riding along.